Welcome to this Climate Action Breakfast. It's great to see many of you today, many members of the community, and especially welcome to the new people, new members, or people that are joining the first time. Feel free, please, to share in the chat where you're connecting from and also which organization you're representing here today. So we will start in a few seconds while last people are joining, but we wanted to say a couple of words before. First of all, if we didn't cross paths already, if you didn't meet me already, very nice to meet you. My name is Sara Bettinelli and I am Content and Community Manager at LFCA. And I'm very happy to welcome you here today on behalf of our team. Also, today, we will talk about the importance of collaboration when it comes to climate action. And we thought that there was no better way to prove how important collaboration is than to walk the talk ourselves. And therefore, please meet Ipsita Bhatia, our partner for this event with Countazin. Ipsita, she's leading on partnerships and business engagement at Countazin, and we're very happy to collaborate with them on these and many other projects. So Ipsi, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep it short and just say thank you all for being here and also for having us. We love being a part of this community and really looking forward to the session this morning.
Thank you, Ipsi. It's great to collaborate with you. And I would say we can start as our agenda is quite packed for today. First, a bit of house rules reminder, especially for the new people joining for the first time. So please feel free to use the chat for questions during the presentations. Of course, you can also just unmute yourself spontaneously during the Q&A and ask your questions. But rest assured that every question that you share in the chat, we will collect them and then report them to the speakers at the end. Also, if you feel like it, please turn your camera on because it's always nice to see the community and it's nice to see your faces. And feel also free to use the emojis for visual feedback so that we give our speakers a nice feeling. And finally, a short reminder that the event is being recorded. So please know that you will receive the recording afterwards in a follow-up email with all the material. So no resource from today's event will go lost. And now, without further ado, I'm very happy to present the agenda for the day. So in a few seconds, Philip Singer, our co-founder and managing director, will share with us some community updates. I won't spoil anything, but we have some very cool projects coming up. We are very excited to share them with you. And please, Lisa, could you mute? Thank you. And yes, so we will have some community updates, and then further on, we will talk about how can businesses change societies and society, and what can companies like the ones that you are part of do to go beyond internal climate action and really engage with their stakeholders, their customers, and their partners to have an impact on the climate crisis and on society in general. So as this is a quite big question to unpack in a 1-hour meeting, we will be helped today by 3 great speakers that we are very happy to welcome in our Climate Action Breakfast. We will start with Konrad von Schipanski, who is partner and director at the Boston Consulting Group. The Boston Consulting Group has climate among its main points of interest, and they were also exclusive COP26 consultancy partners. So they are researching a lot into the power of collaboration and especially of businesses in facing the climate crisis. And Konrad is in fact author of the study on how to build a high impact sustainability alliance. So he will walk us through the importance of collaborating among companies and on how companies can engage with external stakeholders and in particular governments. Later on, we will hear from Christoph Dirksens, who is Global Public Affairs Manager at Too Good To Go. Many of you already know probably Too Good To Go. It's a social impact company that fights the environmental, economic, and social challenges of food waste. And they do this in a very simple way by connecting customers and shops that have food that would otherwise go to waste. However, Too Good To Go also goes beyond this. And with Christoph, we will see what's their experience with involving stakeholders in tackling food waste on a wider level, and for example, on how they engage with politicians and in political advocacy. Finally, We will have a very powerful example on how business can cooperate with local actors, NGOs, and civil society to fight the effects of climate change at the local level. And for this, we are joined by Karina O'Gorman, who is European Head of Forces for Good at Innocent Drinks. Innocent is a proud B Corp, and Karina is in the lead of many of such projects, such as the Big Rewild initiative in the UK, of which we will hear more about later. So again, thank you all for coming today and for joining our community. We are looking forward to hear your speeches and to be inspired by your experience. And first, I'd like to give the floor to our co-founder, Philip Singer, for some community updates.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sarah. I will quickly share my screen. Okay. Yeah, so thank you, first of all. I'm extremely delighted to give an update on the Leaders for Climate Action strategy. And I think it makes sense to go back, because I think it is important to understand where Leaders for Climate Action comes from, how it has developed over the last years, in order to really understand the focus points of our strategy going forward. So I want to invite you, let's jump into the year 2018. So when we kicked Leaders for Climate Action off, it was really, the first phase was about building a movement. So we had this big hypothesis: if we just approach business leaders and get them to pledge on personal and on company level, this will create a lot of climate impact. And the amazing thing was that hundreds of people and organizations joined our community and started to be more aware, started to think about, okay, what can we actually do? But to be very honest, we don't think the hypothesis is right, because just doing a pledge is not directly leading to climate action. Because a lot of people were asking us, like, how do I actually do it? What can I do? And also some of the organizations forgot that they took a pledge and simply didn't do enough action. So we transitioned quite quickly into what I call the second phase of Leaders for Climate Action, really building capacity. And in this moment, the climate officers, the sustainability practitioners, they really became the backbone of Leaders for Climate Action. They moved in our focus, and we developed like help for them, a web app that helps you to find easy steps to reduce the carbon footprint, but also all kinds of guides to help you. And for the first time, we could see how much engagement there was in the community, how many people are really actively working on the reduction of the carbon footprint. And that was something that was amazing. And also from the outside, we noticed all of a sudden we are not a pledge movement anymore, but we are perceived as a group of people who really mean it so serious to work on the climate topic, especially in the reduction part. But looking at it even closer, we noticed most of the people, most of the organizations, they are doing small things like changing the energy provider, changing the flight policy, maybe even the server costs. But looking at the data, this is simply not enough if we really want to be part of solving this big climate crisis that we are facing. And therefore, I'm so happy and also proud that in the beginning of the year, we entered the third phase of Leaders for Climate Action. And the third phase of Leaders for Climate Action, it is all about the community. So the community is in the center, and we are trying to really drive action within the industry specific area and also in the sphere of influence, because only in these areas we can really achieve big potentials. And what was so interesting for us to see that everyone in these different industries are looking at the same problems. So everyone is trying to solve the same problems and has an extreme openness to share knowledge, to collaborate on certain things. And the role of Leaders for Climate Action is and will be to be the facilitator of this, be the facilitator to make sure that we are working together on these same problems. And what I want to show you are 3 examples of features and formats that we are launching or that we already did launch that are really doubling down on this strategy. And the first one is that our climate action platform became a knowledge hub. So imagine I'm a person that wants to drive sustainability in the organization and I need to create a climate action strategy. Maybe I've never done it, or maybe I've just done it in the past to have a strategy, but it was not really thought through. So what I can do is I go on the knowledge base and I go to the module of creating a strategy, and I see who else is working on the topic right now. I can see the best practices on how to create a climate action strategy. And I can maybe download 30 other climate action strategies of organizations that are potentially even having a similar business model. And when I then do my own strategy, at the end, I upload the document and give visibility to everyone who comes after me to this place. And I think what is important to understand is I'm not only talking about this one action of climate action strategy, but I'm talking about hundreds of different things to drive climate action in your industry or beyond that you have access to. So very excited that we got this going in the beginning of the year. And the second thing that I want to talk about is that was also a really big ask from people in our community is, how do I find the right partners? How do I find the right service providers? So what we did is we launched a tool directory in the beginning for service providers in the accounting space, where you have access to the 55 biggest companies that are out there. And you can see who else in the community worked with them, what were the nice things, what were maybe the things that were not so perfect. And again, if you like, schedule a call with a few people out of the community, get some feedback on the work with the service provider and make a decision. And I'm happy that next week or the week after, I'm not yet really sure, we will launch the employee engagement space as well, where we are trying to give visibility to these kind of organizations. And maybe in the future, we will represent all kinds of services out there and make the decision-making for you much easier. And now coming to the third one, and I don't want to judge, but this is by far my favorite format that we have. And these are our mastermind groups. So we have about 32 different mastermind groups in the different industries. So starting from healthcare or energy management and innovation, hardware, design and video agencies, transportation, where we create a safe space where you come together with a lot of other people in the same industry once a month for 1 hour, and you can share your ideas, you can also share your challenges, and you can get kind of the knowledge and the feedback from people that are potentially even working on the same things. Because one thing that we have learned, if we want really to drive big action, it's complicated, and if we do it together, it's just so much easier. And all of these things are not accounting, simple reduction and commitments, but they target the sphere of influence. So what can we do in the value chains? What can we do in the industry change? And what can we do in the system change? So I'm personally really excited to listen to the speakers, because everyone talks about initiatives in the sphere of influence. And now coming to my last slide, and also the time to say thank you, because we built Leaders for Climate Action in the last 3.5 years, because we had a lot of volunteers that were doing this for free. And we had a bunch of donors that really committed a lot of money to kind of build up the operational team. So big thank you for the support in the past. But also I want to talk about the new phase of Leaders for Climate Action, where we will include a membership model that starts with 42 euros per month for small companies and goes up for the bigger companies. Because if we really want to achieve this big vision and really achieve kind of the commitments that we give you, that we will facilitate this knowledge exchange and run all kinds of campaigns, we need finances for it, and hundreds of people already joined the membership, and looking forward to get your answer. In case you haven't answered our mail, please do this until the 30th October. Yeah, and with this, I just want to say enjoy. Looking forward to the next speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. And yes, indeed, today's event is very much in line with our sphere of influence idea and alignment. So I'm very, very excited to announce our first speaker. Please, everybody, if you have any questions on these new projects that have been launched, also, this is a matter that can be asked in the chat, so feel free. And then with this, Conrad, I would like to give you the floor. So yes, please. And you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Apologies. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Philip, for this amazing intro. Couldn't have been a better setup for my presentation. So very quickly, I'm a partner director in BCG's London office. I work industry-wise mostly in the resource industries, metals, mining, but I also lead BCG's partnership service line for joint ventures alliances, digital ecosystems globally. With that hat on, we worked together with our sustainability teams over the last few months, and looked at a number of sustainability alliances, corporate-led sustainability alliances, to try to understand what makes those ones that have a real impact successful, and what can we learn from those alliances that are really impactful. To that extent, we reviewed about 50 of those globally in various industries, some of them organized along value chains, other organized around themes like, for instance, biodiversity, others organized around a certain industry, for instance, oil and gas, and categorized them by the degree of impact really they had at scale. And what was interesting to see that about only a third of those sustainability alliances are really able to have a sustained large-scale impact at the root cause level. Another third is sort of has the potential to do so, but there's also a significant share of those alliances that really do not much more than mitigating negative side effects of the industries today. It was also interesting to see that those alliances that have an impact really at scale are ones that are on average 15 years old, right? So it became very clear from that analysis, we need to do these corporate sustainability alliances to do better much faster. So before I go into what distinguishes the impactful ones from the less impactful ones, let's look quickly at what these sustainability alliances do. Why an alliance, right? There are certain things that you simply cannot achieve as a single company. Again, in my home industry of mining, 90% of scope 3 emissions are, of CO2 emissions are scope 3, so they are not under your direct control. And you have similar effects in other industries as well. So really coming together to set industry standards, to increase transparency, collectively align on data, work with suppliers, really bring the collective strength of the alliance to do is something that only alliances can do. Shaping the context is important, right? You want to influence regulations, not with that is not watering down meant, but also really lifting up the hurdle and the bar for all to clear. In order to bring competition to an equal footing, right? Also driving innovation, mobilizing capital, engaging with academia, funding innovation is something that alliances are particularly good at. So now when we looked at, again, what distinguishes the impactful ones from the less impactful ones, right? There are really 3 categories of criteria, and I'll walk through on next slide. It's really starts with who you collaborate with, right? Who is in your alliance? Secondly, it centers around what that alliance actually does, and thirdly, how do you mobilize? So we rather than walk you through the factors on that, let me do that on the next slide, because it also sheds some quantitative insights on our analysis, right? So we again looked at the impactful ones to the less impactful ones, saw what's distinguished them, and that allowed us to really quantify really the importance of these factors. Let me pick out a few ones, right? It starts engaging with market leaders, right? You want to have in your alliance companies that are household names, that have scale behind them, that have brand recognition, that have the ability to influence the supply base, that have the ability to influence the public and government. So getting the market leaders into your alliance almost increases the likelihood of making an impact by a factor of 2. Second one, and one of the most important factors, is really engage members along the value chain, right? There's a upstream, downstream. The emissions example I gave, scope 3 emissions, provide a perfect example. You cannot decarbonize shipping without getting fuel suppliers, insurance companies, shipping companies, engine makers, technology providers, and clients, customers, all working together. Another one is standards and metrics and data transparencies. Those go really together, right? You need to have the ability, or if you are doing that, you increasing the likelihood by almost a factor of 3 creating a body of data that is universally accessible, that allows also externals, for instance, investors, customers, to assess performance and distinguish or see progress, really, really important. If we go further sort of downstream, dedicated secretariat, it doesn't have to be sort of with these words, right? But what we here mean is the alliance cannot just be a very small, say, PR group bringing together people for discussions and meetings. You need to have real execution capacity in the alliance, right? And that means having capabilities to foster innovation, to raise capital, to engage with stakeholders, to engage with governments, to work with suppliers and improve their practices. You need real sort of execution capacity in the alliance, right? And one of the most important is really measuring against the impact strategy. That really means, first of all, you need to have an impact strategy. Also, some people call it a theory of change, right? A deep understanding of what is the problem that we're trying to solve and what is at the root cause of that problem, right? And that requires quite some research, hence also the enlist external experts further left on that. And then once you have that impact strategy, so relentlessly measuring how you're progressing, publicly reporting progress, comes back to the data, and transparency is incredibly important. In a lot of these alliances, of course, and sustainability action is not something that corporates alone can drive. So therefore, the collaboration with governments is crucially important. And to that, I think there was one question I received early on is what are different ways that alliances can engage with governments? And this consultants love 2x2 matrices. So here you go. Really, we know a lot of, or we have a lot of experience and have seen a lot of sort of the conventional engagements between the public sector and the private sector, right? That is either the government's driving legislation, so being directive, either specific or in a type of framework, or it is rather small scale engagements like in a public-private partnership, right? Where you have typically one government entity and a small handful of private entities coming together to deliver a very definitive outcome, right? What is maybe a new way is private-public ecosystems, right? Where you really bring together a group of independent economic actors on the private side, number of government entities to really enable joint innovation, resiliency, new offers, new partners joining, an expanding offer over time that really unleashes the combined innovation power of the alliance. We can maybe talk more, happy to talk, catch up privately, or if you catch up with me on LinkedIn. Ecosystems really are a novel form of innovation and collaboration partnership that we see most prominently, of course, in the tech industry. 70% of the world's most valuable companies have ecosystems at their core. That increasingly now indicates also in the sustainability sector, it's a way to bring disparate and independent parties together to create innovative ways of partnering and creating and offering solutions. I'll stop here at my allotted time. Thanks a lot. Very happy to take questions. As I said previously, I apologize. I need to quickly dial out. We'll dial in 5 minutes again, and then I'm available for a Q&A until the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Konrad. Yes, indeed, Konrad will stay available for questions dialing in, and thank you so much for joining us today.
I'll be right back. Thank you.
And we always talk about the power of collaboration, right? And it's very inspiring to see how impactful it can really be. Also, for those that didn't see it in the chat, we dropped a couple of links to know more about the presentation and the topic. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Christoph to talk about Too Good To Go's experience.
Thank you. Let me just unmute first to not make the classical mistake these days. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Beautiful. All right, great. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for having us here. I'm Christoph. I'm with Too Good To Go. Too Good To Go is a social impact company based in Copenhagen, although we operate in 17 markets these days. I want to talk to you about food waste today and explain really how the fight against climate change is at the heart, or actually totally ingrained in our business model. Let me start by giving you a few numbers or statistics that you might actually know, maybe yes, maybe no, to describe the food waste problem that we're facing, right? So more than a third of the food that we produce is actually wasted. And there are studies today, more recent ones, that say it's actually closer to 40%. But think about it. So 40% or a third or 40% of all the food we produce globally is actually wasted. It's pretty staggering. And you know also that waste happens, of course, from production to consumption, from farm to fork, across the whole supply chain. And the problem with that is that, you know, when you waste food, when industries, people waste food, we also waste the resources that went into producing that food, right? So land, water, energy, labor, you name it, all the resources it took to create that food. Further mapping the problem, food waste alone is responsible for 8% of global greenhouse gases. Actually, food waste was a country. It would be the third emitting country after the US and China. And then the final statistic is unfortunately on food insecurity, on the social impact. 870 million people go hungry. It's about 9% also of the European population in Europe that can't afford a quality meal every second day. So, you know, I get a little bit irritated sometimes when, especially in these times, we talk about the fact that we need to produce more food, that the food production is at risk. We're producing way too much food. The question is an allocation, correct allocation of food, and a need to waste less. All right, so that was just to map the issue a little bit. I think we've sort of established that there is a significant issue with the food waste problem. I want to share with you how Too Good To Go is seeking to address that challenge through its business model on the one hand, and through awareness raising efforts, action and activities on the other hand. So Too Good To Go is, as I said earlier, a social impact company, right? So we've created, on the one hand, an app on the phone. Some of you might know it, some of you might use it. It looks like this on your screen, and it functions like a business to consumer marketplace for surplus food. The idea is quite simple, really. It's, you know, food businesses like hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, but also manufacturers, primary producers. They can make their surplus food available to consumers in the form of magic bags, instead of throwing that food away at the end of the day. So you see the interface, what it looks like here. Consumers choose a store that they want to save a magic bag of surplus food from at discounted price. Of course, we use a rule of 3. So the value of what you get inside a magic bag is 3 times what you've paid for the magic bag. So if you pay a magic bag, let's say €4, the value of what's in it would need to be €12, you know, in function of, you know, what it cost in store during the day. You know, we do that to provide incentive, but we also know that otherwise the store would have thrown it away. So, you know, it would have been 0. So it's merely a cost-saving mechanism. It's not an idea to create a separate sales channel for the store. So you choose your store, you get the details from what could be included in the bag, where you can pick it up at one time, and then you save the meal by confirming and picking it up in the store at the agreed time. For us, we see it really as a triple win solution, both for the business, the consumer, but also the environment, the planet overall. I want to zoom in on that planet environment part. The way we see it is that, you know, by saving meals, we're saving the world's resources from going to waste. And, you know, in turn, prevent CO2 emissions from being, prevent additional CO2 emissions. We've actually partnered with an organization that's called My Climate. Some of you may know it, who have calculated the equivalent of CO2e avoided per magic bag saved. It's about 2.5 kilos of CO2e per magic bag. And so today, we, as I said earlier, we operate in 70 markets, and we've saved just over 160 million magic bags of surplus food from going to waste in the last 6 years. So, and that's in short how we ingrain the environmental impact of food waste at the core of our business model. I said we also do things beyond that. And what I mean by that is that one of the things we've identified being the problem with food waste is complete lack of awareness. Nobody likes to waste food, of course, but everybody does it. Business consumers, everybody does it, because unfortunately it's ingrained in the way our global food system works today. So in addition to our app, we want to help tackle this problem of awareness by engaging with households, with consumers, with businesses, but also with schools, and also with policymakers to help tackle that problem of awareness. You know, we have about 62 million registered users of Too Good To Go. We work with just over 100,000 businesses in those 17 countries, from local corner stores to large retailers. But we figured that's quite a reach, and so we can use the reach that we have there to really, you know, help tackle this problem beyond the application, the tool that we provide people to use on a day-to-day basis. So it's really about inspiring people and stakeholders to try to come to a newfound respect for food, and creating handy tools or changing practices. One of the way we try to change practices, you see here on this slide, it's a little bit of an obsession of ours. It's date labels. We don't like the way that date labels are currently displayed on products. We don't like that there is a complete lack of awareness with consumers that there is a difference between a use by date and a best before date, and that products that carry a best before date are completely fine to eat after the date, as long as they've been stored properly. It's completely fine to rely on your senses, to look, to smell, to taste before throwing them away. But today we see that, you know, it doesn't really matter. Consumers don't check if it's a use by date or a best before date. They just read the numbers. If the numbers are passed, they throw it away. So we wanted to create something that influences that behavior, that sort of generates a pause moment with consumers to actually get a little moment of reflection to see, you know, do I really need to throw that away? So we've created it's called the date labeling campaign. It's live in 12 countries in Europe at the moment. And the idea is simple. We created that little logo that you see. It exists in different executions and obviously different languages, but it basically is there to remind consumers that for best before dates, you don't need to immediately throw it away. You can rely on your senses. We estimate that by now between 1.4 and 1.5 billion individual products carry that label in Europe today. So pay attention from time to time when you're in the supermarket, maybe you snap a little glance of it. But yeah, it's one of the ways that we want to influence business practices to create behavioral change in the issue of food waste. And the other issue, or another way that we try to do that, and it links a bit to what Conrad was saying earlier about influencing regulations for good, is, you know, that we try to engage policymakers so that they would raise the bar on regulating the food waste issue. We see that a lot of voluntary approaches on food waste works a bit, not enough, not fast enough, definitely not fast enough if anybody is to meet the UN SDG 12.3 of reducing food waste by 50% by 2030. So we know that there are some good examples out there of countries that have created, drafted legislation to reduce food waste. France, for example, installed a ban on food waste for retailers and later manufacturers. They have to donate surplus food. They cannot throw it away. Italy has taken another approach. Italy was quite innovative early days in creating a very easy liability regime for food businesses to donate food to charity, making the charity the end user, and so removing all liability from the donating store, which led again to a lot of food donation. And so what we do is that we see a lot of other countries starting to create food waste legislation. Some examples today: Austria, the UK, Spain, and they take a lot of approaches, a lot of different approaches. The EU as well. The EU is preparing legislation to create binding food waste reduction targets for the EU. I mean, after all, we have reduction targets for any other sort of resource, right? From paper to glass to metal, you name it, plastic. So why not food? So we're very active on engaging with these governments to really push them to raise the bar and that, support them with the learnings that we have and what we see in other countries that has worked or hasn't worked, trying to move the needle there. So I'm going to wrap up and leave you with 3 takeaways. First is the food waste problem. It's massive, causes serious environmental, social, and economic consequences. Second one is that at Too Good To Go, we've created a very simple digital tool to help people fight against food waste in their day-to-day habits. And the third one is that there's a big problem of awareness with food waste. And so we try to tackle that issue with the campaigns and initiatives that we have beyond the application. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Christoph. Yeah, this is very interesting, and congrats on all the brilliant campaigns. It's nice to see this multi-level approach from customers to governments. Also, in the chat, Jen was sharing that there is a very great documentary on food waste that is called Just Eat It. So I just wanted to share this with everybody, because it is indeed an underestimated problem when it comes to climate change. Yeah, and now it would be my pleasure to give the floor to Karina and hear a bit about Innocent's experience with engaging with external stakeholders. So please, Karina.
Thank you, and morning everyone, nice to join you. Making me a bit hungry actually reading all the food discussion that was going on in the chat. There was a lot of bakery chat. But this morning we're going to tell you a little bit about the Big Rewild, which is a campaign Innocent launched earlier this year. If you haven't come across Innocent before, we make great tasting juice and smoothies, so enjoy with your breakfast if you're out and about having a look. But really for us, it was about trying to find an opportunity to engage with our drinkers, engage and partner with all of our different stakeholders to look at how we tackle climate change. So what this was, or what is the Big Rewild? So as I said, we launched it earlier this year, and it's a commitment we've made to protect and preserve 2 million hectares of land. And we want to do that across Europe with our business across Europe, but actually it's a sort of global commitment looking at how we can do that. And it really comes from the fact that we've always had a commitment to doing things in the right way. As a business, we started with purpose at the heart 23 years ago, always very much focused on giving 10% of our profit to make a difference, and gradually over time building more and more sort of sustainability and commitments into what we do. We focus on 3 big dreams, so healthier people, healthier communities and healthier planet, which obviously this sits as part of. And we have some pathways for us as a business. So we have a science-based target. We're committed to being carbon neutral by 2025. And we recently opened something we call the Blender, which is our first ever factory. And it's an all electric, fully carbon neutral production facility for us. So we had all of this in play. We know we're trying to do what we need to do from a decarbonisation perspective. But actually, if you think about us, we are literally nature in a bottle. That is what we do. That is what our business relies on. If we want to be a resilient business for the future, nature couldn't be more important to us. And this is where this kind of biodiversity commitment came from. Because also, as we all know, the reality, if we protect nature, we allow it to thrive, then we all ultimately benefit from there. And it's obviously intrinsically linked into climate action as well. So the reason we went for sort of rewilding or protecting and preserving nature, and this is a shot from us rewilding Trafalgar Square in London earlier in the year, so quite an iconic statement to take a very grey area of London, bring nature in, bring greenery in. And the focus of that is really two things, as I said. So firstly, how we can help people understand climate change in a bit more of a manageable way. I think often when we talk about climate, it can feel very disconnected, it can feel very far away from people and they're not engaging in the right way. But actually, when you talk about it in terms of nature, nature-based solutions, it does seem to capture interest and understanding a lot more. And it was absolutely amazing on the day, the amount of people that came by were talking about nature, talking about climate, but also well-being and how they felt by being in green surroundings. It's just reminding people how important nature is for all of us. So I think it was a great way to focus on rewilding, and really is a right space for us to be talking about, because as I said, without nature, there wouldn't be anything for us to be doing as a business either. But we didn't want to do it on our own. So for us, the whole approach to Big Rewild was really about partnering. So partnering with our drinkers, helping them understand about climate action, and encouraging them to take action as well. But really actually about how do we hit that protect and preserve target on the ground. So there'll be work that we're doing within our supply chain, so looking at regenerative agriculture programs, looking at how we can rewild within our own supply chain, which will form part of our target. But actually we also wanted that local market activity as well. So each of our markets looked for a community partner, an NGO partner on the ground that specialised in land preservation or protection, nature-based solutions. So everyone has a partner that they've been working with this year. There's different ways it's come to life in each market, but ultimately to protect some area of land and to talk about nature and rewilding and engage. And I think really powerful because, again, we're not the experts. We want to work with experts to make sure that we're tackling the issues in the market as needed, and learning from the expertise that's available there as well. And then, as I said, it's really important to get our drinkers involved, because actually if we can inspire everyone to understand climate change a bit more and feel like they can take action, because often, as we say, there's nothing worse than feeling depressed about the world but not knowing where to start to take action. And Too Good To Go is a great example of giving you a solution to feel like you're taking action as well. So that was why that was a really important part for what we wanted to do. So we've built a whole web-based platform for this. So drinkers can come on, they can learn about different ways to rewild even their gardens. You know, you can improve nature in your own garden, natural pollinators. So we did a lot of that to help educate. So we teach people about why this matters. We talk about climate change. We give them ways to get involved. We also link through to all of the organisations that we work with, volunteering opportunities as well, to hopefully help inspire people and keep things moving. The other piece of what's on here is there's a huge amount of substantiation and transparency about what Innocent actually does as a business, because there's nothing worse than, I'm sure, seeing brands say, hey, we're doing this little thing, and they're like, yes, but you're asking me to do stuff. What are you actually doing? So we actually have a carbon neutral orange juice that we launched at the same time. So we've released all of the footprint information on there, how we're offsetting the projects that we're working with. We've got our decarbonisation strategy on there, our 2030 science-based target. So we've really tried to put as much information for people. So if you want some light interest reading, that's there. But if you want to go really deep, and you're particularly interested in the technicalities behind that as well, we've tried to make sure that sits in there as well. And then finally, it's also about working with policymakers. So just as you've already heard earlier today, it's, you know, the change is only going to happen when we're creating a movement of change makers from the ground up. So we're getting drinkers and the public getting involved, talking about the topic, but also legislators as well. So we wanted to really make sure that we're connecting with our policymakers. So this is some photos from a UK event that we did. We rewilded Parliament. So that was always fun when you get to go in and make things a bit greener for them too. But actually a really important way to be understanding biodiversity, talking about the challenges ahead, helping them think about nature-based solutions. Most countries are setting their net zero targets now, making sure that, or have got their commitments, but not sure how to get there. So making sure that nature-based solutions is one of the things that they're looking at as well, and that regulation will help drive this change, as well as all of us trying to do the right thing as well. So I guess, what did we learn through this approach and what we've done? I think a couple of things for us. We all know greenwashing is the word of choice that's used a lot at the moment. So I think there was a huge piece for us when we were launching such a big activity like this, that we wanted to really think through how we do it in the right way. And so for us, it was really making sure actually that we were confident we had long-term commitments already in sustainability, which we do. We've been working on this for a very long time, and that we're transparent about that. So we would never do anything like this unless we were sure we were already walking the right steps that were needed at that point. So for us, it definitely builds on that, but also the platform itself that we've launched is, you know, a long-term commitment. It's not a one-off marketing campaign. So it's about sparking this movement, taking action, working with partners. And that was really powerful for us, finding the right partners and experts at the local level. And then I think just navigating everything that's going on in the outside world, the way people view climate change, nature-based solutions, even rewilding, there's very differing opinions on if rewilding is a good thing or the right thing to do. So constantly navigating that changing external environment and scientific understanding is something we've had to do. And I guess be brave to do that. It would be very easy to say, do you know what, this is quite a tough subject to talk about. It can be quite polarizing. People have very clear views on it. The easy option is just stay quiet. Let's not talk about it. Let's not try and spark a movement of change. But that's not who we are. We believe we're trying to do the right thing. So we want to encourage others to join us, and hopefully, you know, if we can combine forces, if we can inspire more change together, then we hope that there's a greater collective action through that as well. And I think that was my last slide. You get a thank you. There you go.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I like the idea of the nature in a bottle and the connection with the Rewild campaign. So yeah, thank you. Super interesting as well. All your efforts again at multi-level. It's great to see, and indeed it's time to be brave on this project. So yeah, thank you, Karina, and thank you to all the speakers. It's great to see these kind of examples. And if there are any questions, now we can open the floor a bit, so you can either write in the chat or unmute yourself. And also, of course, if you have questions regarding what Phil presented before, so the mastermind groups, the new projects, anything, the floor is open. And also, yes, also the link regarding the Big Reward campaign is again been shared in the chat. So if you want to know more, you can also go there.
I have a question to Christoph. Like when it comes to political campaigning, I find it always interesting, or like many companies don't know how to start something like this. Do you have a playbook? Like what did you do? Did you work with did you try to use public pressure? Or do you work with an agency? Like how, do you have any ideas on this?
Just checking. Yeah, I'm not on mute. It's a good question. Actually, we have a dedicated team working on that only. So we have a public affairs team to go. Myself and some people in various European capitals like Berlin, Paris, London, Madrid, and so together as a team we work. We all have a background in public affairs and working with governments. So we do that as a team. We establish positions on what we would like to see, analyze legislation that exists in certain countries on food waste, assess market results of the impact of the measures, how they work well, how they could be improved, and then advise governments on how to do that. I think, so the answer to your question is that we use a combination of resources and a dedicated team has experience, who has the experience, I mean, and the power of our brand, which, well, is quite well known. And so policymakers like to receive our input on, you know, what we think could help to drive policy change in their markets. So I would say a combination of these two things.
Thanks.
Sure.
I also had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, also actually for Christoph. So I think thanks all for the nice presentation. So what I was wondering, because I think you're doing a great job in well, relocating kind of food waste or leftovers. So I was wondering, are you also like working together with your partners, so the local bakeries and shops to actually reduce it. So for example, using a data system, for example, to reduce the waste that they have already upfront, instead of moving it to somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a very good question. We try to. Our business model is based on moving it, but at least it's moved to consumption instead of moved to the bin. So I would not call it just moving it. But I get your point. We also want to do something on tackling the production issue. I mean, you meant, okay, let me say two things. The production issue is difficult because we hit a very big hurdle, which is data. Very few businesses are willing to share their food waste data with us, or their production data for that matter. And so we have that barrier quite rapidly, or we don't see that transparency. And so that's actually, in some markets, it's some of the political measures we're calling for, is for food businesses to be mandated to publicly report, measure and report their food waste data. That's actually why we call for that in some markets. You mentioned bread specifically, for example. That's also an interesting one, and maybe also why in some places we have so many bread items. As said on the chat, is that another thing we try to tackle is the return policy on breads. That's still something so crazy. It's, the bakeries are allowed to return breads to producers if they're not sold. I mean, instead of donating them or selling them at discount price or as surplus food, they just ship them back to the producer of the bread, and then obviously they're used for animal feed. So yeah, does that answer it more or less?
Yes, definitely. It's the same that people don't want to create any transparency, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit the issue with food waste, is that we all want to do something about it, but then when it comes to actually showing how much you waste, then suddenly people are more reluctant.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
If there is no question right now, I wanted to ask a question to Karina, because you mentioned science-based targets, and there were also a couple of comments on it in the chat, because indeed it's a recurring question also in our community, and it's such an important initiative. So I wanted to know if there is any advice, any piece of advice you would give to companies that want to start setting science-based targets, and what does it mean for Innocent to have this kind of commitment, basically.
Receive support from the German, the EU, the government of Netherlands, the government of.
Yeah, I don't know, but
okay, happy for me to carry on. Yeah, so the science-based target for us was something we got approved a couple of years ago now, and I guess the key thing for me is, even if you don't get to the final stage of having it approved, starting the work to actually model and figure out what your reduction pathway should look like in line with climate science is something you should be doing, even if you're not going for a science-based target, or you're not ready to commit externally to such a thing. And what's really powerful about it is it helps you understand your business better. It shows where your high emissions are coming from. It shows where you need to take, it helps you prioritize essentially where to take action. And what we really like about it is it gives us something company-wide that everyone's kind of working towards, and they know that there's targets. It then gives us a breakdown. We set our annual targets based on that. So we actually have carbon reduction on our business scorecard. So everyone kind of is very clear, we've got reductions to hit, we need to get on that journey. Now, it's quite frightening when you put it all down and realize the scale of what you need to do. But I think you need a bit of that fear. And I suppose for me, the reason I love having an approved science-based targets, it gives it the validity and credibility, but it also makes it out there. And for me, if I can get a business, if I say it out there, then it means you're 10 times more likely for these things to happen. And it's just the nature of how these things work. So I think that's a lesson I always like to try and get as many public commitments as we can, because then you're able to hold everyone to account, and it's much easier to drive action internally as well.
Yeah, indeed, it's a matter of public commitment, credibility. It really helps moving forward. So yeah, thank you. And also, we have a question for both you, Karina and Christoph. So Carolina is asking to what extent you separate impact management and campaign work. So if you have separate teams working together, or if it's one team. So yeah, I don't know, Karina, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, so for me on something like the Big Rewild, that's our marketing team that want to have something that focuses on sustainability is how that starts. But my team, the Force for Good team, do all the work. They keep the business on track for what we're actually doing with that kind of purpose-led impact work. And then we come together with marketing to talk about what's actually possible, what could we do, what do we already have that we might want to talk about, or actually is there more we could be doing that helps create that campaign. So we collaborate. We actually sit as part of marketing, so we're in the wider marketing function, even though we can be in all different locations of business, but that's where we sit for the business. And so yeah, we partner really closely with marketing to look at how you communicate to your drinkers. And actually we have a really unique tone of voice, so we're quite famous for how we talk on social media and our advertising. So again, it's really powerful for us that the impact we want to achieve, the marketing team really help us then communicate that in a great way to actually people understand what we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. It makes a lot of sense. And Christoph, is your experience similar, or does it differ?
Yeah, it's actually fairly similar. I mean, it depends how you define campaign, how you define impact management, but the way we define it, it's definitely the team working on policy measures is separate, entirely separate. And then the impact team, we have dedicated teams on impact in every country where we are, sometimes one person, sometimes up to 3 people, but across 17 markets. So that's close to 50 people working on impact campaigns. So the work there is separate, but then they work in coordination with the marketing team to assess the synergies and the communication needs on that, because comms sits, for example, in marketing, and so there are obvious touch points and linkages. So yes, it's separate, but there is coordination with the marketing team.
Great, thank you both. I think also Antonia has a question, right? I see your hand raised. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. That's a question to all the speakers. What or which sustainability or impact KPIs do you track? Because we are a software company and we see our customers, so businesses, like KPIs that everyone understands. So for example, what Christoph mentions, how many bags you save is something people can imagine instead of how many tons of CO2. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go first because it's quite brief, because the impact there that we create is our business model. So for us, it's easy to track and report because, I mean, number of magic bags saved, it's true, it's tangible, but the number becomes very big. 160 million, what's 160 million? What's 60 million? What's 160 million? Then it becomes intangible. Also, the fact that we then work with MyClimate to translate that into CO2e becomes also very quickly intangible. We're talking about millions of tons of CO2e, and so that then doesn't mean anything. So that we translate into tangible things. So depending on the number, if you're looking at CO2e saved for one city that we work in, one country that we work in, one select period of time, depending on the number that you come out with, we translate it into tangible things like flights around the world, hours of hot shower running permanently, things like that. Very tangible things that are not necessarily realistic, but at least that you can visualize and understand like that.
Yeah, I guess we're very similar. So we report very transparently. We have an annual ESG report, so it's called the Good All Round report that we release about all the stuff we're up to. And in there we track our carbon emissions, we track how we're performing against our reduction targets, waste, diversion, water, and then we have social metrics in there as well. But similarly, that's obviously we do from a very dry, I hate to say it, but pure reporting perspective, to make sure that we're in line with reporting directives. But then we also look at how when you're storytelling or how when you're bringing that to life, how do you make it feel a little bit more tangible? And actually that was part of the reason for the Big Reward having the 2 million hectares of land, which is the size of Wales roughly as a country. So it was just that tangibility again. So I think it's more in the way you then communicate, but from a sort of authenticity perspective, the pure reporting we do in perhaps not the most interesting way, but to make sure we're giving that true transparency.
Yeah, thank you both. Indeed, like making it very tangible really helps. So yeah, thank you. And I see that we're also slightly over time, so I'll start wrapping up. Thank you to our amazing speakers. Also, Conrad said hi from the chat, and he shared also some resources on food waste. You're very welcome to check them out. And yeah, thank you, Karina and Christoph, for joining us, and for Countazine, of course, for helping us preparing this event today. And yeah, everybody, it's always a pleasure to see you. We are looking forward to see you in our mastermind groups and in all the upcoming projects. So yeah, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Very glad to have been here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.